Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Vale Glamorgan Cabinet meeting taking place today, the 20th of November 2025. May I remind everybody present, the meeting is being live streamed and recorded via the internet, and that recording will be archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking to avoid any background noise or feedback while other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can I either please raise their hand if they're in the chamber or use the raise hand function if you are attending remotely. Please can I ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function can be used to highlight any technical issues to Democratic Services officers. If anyone has any difficulty hearing or being heard during the meeting, please either identify that issue via the chair or through Democratic Services, and we'll do our best to make sure that you are reconnected to the meeting. Everyone is either here in person in the chamber for Cabinet or attending at home. So I'll hand over to the leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, and welcome all today. As Matt's done the announcements at the beginning, we can start straight off into the agenda, item 1, and that's apologies for absence. I have two. I have Mark, who's off representing us on a UK stage, and Bronwyn, who's unable to join us today. So Councillor Brooks and Councillor Wilson. And as you said, everybody else is here, so that's that. Agenda item 2, we've got minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of November, and I'll move that we approve those as a true record.
I'd like to second.
Thank you. Everybody is in agreement, that's fine. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest and the nature of them, if there are any, but I'm not aware of any being notified.
No, they were none identified prior to the meeting today. Thank you.
Thanks. No, none in the meeting. That's super. Then we have a reference from the Place Scrutiny Committee. This is the Replacement Local Development Plan Housing Growth in Barry. This was a meeting that was only held 2 days ago, so superb performance to turn the reference around. And if I'm not mistaken, there were at least 4 Cabinet members present at that meeting to make sure that we heard all of the discussion. I believe, Ruba, as Cabinet member, you're going to lead on this item.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. As you say, thank you very much for Democratic Services for turning this around so quickly, because it was only 2 days ago. And thank you for all the contributions, particularly from members of the public on this item at the Scrutiny Committee on Tuesday. So you'll recall, Cabinet, that I presented this report 2 weeks ago about the housing growth in Barry for the replacement local development plan. The recommendation there was that this then went to place scrutiny for further consideration. From that committee, there was, as you say, Leader, it was a really in-depth discussion. The report itself is a very good report on the consultation, and very transparent, and I think that was appreciated in the meeting. And there were, as I say, very excellent representations made by members of the public and elected members. So there were 5 recommendations. So if I'll try to go through them. So the first recommendation that came from Scrutiny Committee concerned the potential for increase in inappropriate use of protected environmental sites in the vicinity of the proposed Northwest Barry site. It was recommended that suitable, accessible natural green spaces be provided as part of any site development to benefit wider biodiversity interests and species in the area. So the concerns of the committee are noted, and it is advised, and this was responded to by Head of Sustainable Services at the meeting, that that the illustrative layout for the site, which was included in the Housing Growth in Barry consultation document, includes a significant area of open space to the south, a wetland corridor through the centre of the site, and areas for more formal open space within the wider development. So the open space to the south will be, I think, as far as we're concerned, will be a suitable, accessible, natural green space, which will support biodiversity enhancement, and of course links directly to Porthcurry Country Park. The second recommendation was concerned to note that the modelling showed that the outline proposed improvements to Waycott Cross indicated adverse impacts on traffic congestion. The strategic transport assessment must identify mitigating action which significantly address traffic congestion, minimise the impact of additional traffic on nearby feeder routes. So in response to that, the strategic transport assessment is in the process of being prepared. And I think I highlighted that 2 weeks ago when I brought this report originally. And it considers the cumulative impact of the replacement local development plan sites on strategic highways network. So the strategic transport assessment is in its advanced stage of preparation, and the initial work to date indicates that a mitigation scheme can be delivered that would mitigate the impact of the growth in traffic associated with our replacement local development plan sites on that particular roundabout. And it's anticipated that the Northwest Barry site could deliver, for example, road widening as part of the improvement scheme. And of course, there will be a requirement for on-site and off-site improvements to sustainable transport, including active travel routes. And this requirement will be set out within the deposit plan. And of course, the exact detail of improvements will need to be determined at the planning application stage. And I think, I'm reiterating what I've said on this already. And the future applications will also need to be accompanied by site-specific a site-specific transport assessment. The third recommendation concerning, again, the Northwest Barry site, noted that the report referred to the need for increased school places and potential additional health capacity. So there was a recommendation that any additional development must not impact negatively on current provision for residents. So in response to that, Leader, I would say that, planning officers, of course, have been working closely with our education colleagues to determine the demand for school places as a result of all the new developments, not just the Northwest Barry site. And the deposit plan will set out where additional school capacity is expected to be required. And this will be secured as a commuted sum through Section 106, through a Section 106 agreement at the planning application stage. So, and in addition, officers, as the report states, have been working closely with the Health Board to ensure that they are aware of the future demands associated with the development. So that conversation is ongoing, and of course they are statutory consultees to this consultation, but of course our LDP in general. The fourth recommendation concerned was concerned with a management plan, that a management plan should be in place to incentivise the transfer of open spaces from new developments, and such as these 3 potential sites in Barry, to local council and public sector control. Now, as we know, there have been issues concerning this in the past, and it's recognised that the management of open spaces is a matter that residents have raised concerns about on many recent development sites. This is, again, this is a detailed matter that can be addressed as part of the planning application process. But alternative options for the ongoing management of open space could certainly be considered at the appropriate stage, which may include, for example, transfer to town or community councils instead of the local authority. if this was considered appropriate. So this is something that, we are considering as, ongoing. And the final recommendation was that a community needs assessment should be undertaken to identify infrastructure and transport needs in relation to the Bendrix development. And that this should include consultation with local elected ward members and current residents, and that the scope should encompass also the strategic transport assessment. So the Bendrix the Bendrix site is a scheme that is proposed to be brought forward by the council's housing development team, delivering 70 new affordable homes adjacent to the recently completed council scheme at Hayswood Road. So it's recognised that the Bendrix is expanding as a community, and this will help sustain existing bus services. The housing development team will soon be holding a consultation on the development as part of the pre-application consultation process prior to the submission of a planning application. This offers real opportunity to ask existing residents and elected members for their views on what the community needs in terms of infrastructure and transport. And the outcomes of this, of course, will be recorded as part of the PAC report, and will feed or can feed into the development of any subsequent proposal where appropriate. So, I again, Leader, I thank the committee for their input, and I think they received these responses on the night, but I'd like to reiterate that and that we are considering all the recommendations that were made.
Thanks.
Sorry, that was quite long, but I thought it was important to go through it.
Thanks, Ruben. No, it was very detailed, and I think it shows the level of consideration that's gone into it. And I know from the discussion at scrutiny that it had been considered in depth. And I think, as you noted, that the plans that have already been negotiated with the proposed developers outlined those links and green corridors and the sustainable drainage and all that sort of thing. A lot of other things will happen within the planning process should this go through. Once because it has to go to inspection, hasn't it, with Welsh Government inspectors. I think it'd be useful for people to know that we do have conversations with the Public Service Board colleagues. We actually took the replacement local development plan to them for them to see. We talked about the importance of getting the planning to join up so that we are planning facilities at the same time as any sort of housing developments. And that was very constructive. So, and I think from our perspective, you can see that, for example, in the Western Gateway, I mean, it's taking a long time. We're quite happy to step outside our remit to help facilitate health developments, health facilities, should that be necessary. And that's exactly what we're doing with Western Gateway. The stuff about management plan for open spaces, there is a direction of travel on this with Welsh Government. The proposed or the now in place Cosmeston site, that will be adopted by local government. I think that there have been enough strongly worded discussions with developers in terms of other local developments in the Vale, and that is something I think we have to press. At the moment, there is an issue in terms of legislation that developers can choose not to agree for roads or public open space to be adopted, and that can cause problems. But we know, I mean, I got quoted twice actually in that planning meeting where I've said about about not being happy with public developers. And if I had my way, the volume developers wouldn't be in the Vale, and I'll say it again, because of these sorts of issues. So we will continue to argue with developers for any public open space, any roads, etc., to be fully adopted by local authorities, who are then statutory, have statutory responsibilities to them, and that's where you get decent quality provision. And then the last bit, as you mentioned, in the Bendrix, it's interesting because as the number of houses developed has increased, we've now got 2 buses serving that. Not every hour of the day, but the 94 and the 88 both go there. And also there's obviously Section 106 money that becomes available with developments to allow that. So there's a nice little play area there, and I think there's another one planned. So I think that, you know, actually looking at community needs and consulting with residents is a really good idea. So I'm happy to support. I think for those we are in agreement, but I think for where we are in it, as you said, we'll note those and look to take them forward during the planning processes. So thanks very much, and I'll second. And I can't see anybody raising their hands or anything, so that's passed. Thank you. So moving on, this is where it becomes all me. We're into finance. Look, I will catch up with my papers now. We're on to agenda item 5, and that's the Q2 revenue monitoring for this financial year. So in effect, we're looking at the half-year picture on this. This is going to go to scrutiny, so I think we're going to probably have a much more in-depth discussion on this. But if we look at it, I mean, we are still experiencing significant demand, and it's the areas that we usually have that demand in: children's services, adult services, normally due to demographic pressures. Homelessness, pupils with additional learning needs. So we tend to talk about education, but additional learning needs is the bigger area on that. And school transport. School transport is a major challenge, and we were having a long discussion about that earlier this week to see what the options are and what's being investigated. There are some pressures across neighbourhood services, such as in respect of roads maintenance, waste, grounds maintenance and street cleansing. Hopefully we'll see some movement on that. But we do have the supported borrowing initiative from Welsh Government, which means that we actually, I think we're spending about 4 million on roads this year, and it's planned again for next year. So actually somebody did comment to me about how many roads we were doing, so we'll get an update on that. A bit of a challenge in terms of delivering savings. That's reviewed on a weekly basis by the council's senior leadership team and also comes to scrutiny. And although we do prioritise schools alongside social care in terms of funding, there remains a deficit in schools, and we are working with schools and governing bodies to develop plans to address the deficits. And it's not just the plans, we're actually also developing support for them in full recognition that schools are not highly qualified financial advisors. So we have people who are, and people who have understanding of schools and how they run, to support our schools, to look at contracts maybe that they've taken on, or you know, are there better ways that they could deliver specific services. So if you have a look, it's probably easier on this to have a look in the executive summary on page 2. You've got the outturn summary there, and that therefore talks about the projected outturn now, and the variance to that is in the final column. the unplanned use of reserves, as well as the school's use of reserves. And that comes down to an outturn at the moment of just over 23 million in terms of reserves. The actual total amount of reserves is at table 2 on page 3, and that is demonstrating that as of March this year we had just over 63 million in our reserves, but at the moment is projected in March of next year to be down to just under 40 million. So we are in challenging times, and we'll be going over this an awful lot more over the coming months as we move into budget setting for the next year. Well, we're already in budget setting for next year, but as we actually start to bring reports forward, which I think is next cabinet, yes. So the recommendations, because this is going to go to scrutiny, and will come back to us once they've had a look and a discussion. The recommendations are that the report and the financial measures taken and proposed be approved. And the second one is that the report is referred to Resources Scrutiny Committee for consideration, and for any recommendations to be referred back to Cabinet for consideration. And I'm happy to move.
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Sandra. And everybody else happy? So that's fine. So agenda item 6 is the capital monitoring for period 1st of April to 30th September. So again, a half-year update, and details by scheme. If you have a look at Appendix 1, the details by scheme are shown on that. Appendix 2 provides a summary of the position of the capital programme by directorate, and that's right back from approval in March of this year. Goes through it. Also then, as now that we're about half year, we're starting to see things that we probably won't get over the line by April of next year, end of March next year, and so what needs to be programmed in to next year, and that's also set out in the plan. But the current approved programme is 128, well, just under 129 million. And the movements to the revised programme of 98.9 million. We are still having cost increases, steel particularly, various other materials, cost of transport, etc. is on that. So officers continue to work with project managers. If we have increases, we do have specialist quantity surveyors who will look at any suggested increases to see whether or not there are ways in which they can be avoided before any are signed off. So as I mentioned, the movement into next year of 27 million is also outlined in the report, and the reasons for it. The other thing actually that's worth looking is that some of the things that we've actually been doing, and one that struck me is if you look at page 6, paragraph 2.10, it's before and after pictures of property utilising empty homes grant. And I've experienced, not of this house, I've experienced of this, is that there was a house in my ward that was a complete blight on the neighbourhood for many years. And in a similar way to that, that our officers in different departments work together to actually turn that around. And not only is it a super house now, but it's made life a lot more pleasant for the neighbours. So the more that we can do about that. I also need to clarify, if you look at 2.16, because Mark's not here, so I shall clarify on that. talks about Barry Island lighting. This is the lighting on Barry Island is actually quite specialised. You know, you've got nice globes on ornate lampposts, and when we've been doing the change over to LED bulbs, those were actually quite specialised. So this is a piece of work to be able to change those now over to LED, and also to make sure that they're all double checked and upgraded, etc. within that. But as I said, all those various things are laid out, the different pieces of work that we're currently doing, and I know things that have been had a lot of discussion around the Penarth Marina landslip and the retaining wall on Windsor Road. They are programmed in, and details of those are on page 10 as well. So again, this one's going to go to Scrutiny Committee. I think I'm looking. Yes, I have put it. I've highlighted it. We're all right. So I'm not going to read all these recommendations. The recommendations, we've got 6 recommendations, and they are laid out on pages 2 and 3 of the report. Most of them are in recommendation 4, which is all the movements of budgets, but I'm happy to move them as laid out.
I'm happy to second, Leader.
Thank you. So let's have a look. So moving on to Treasury Management. This is a mid-year report. Every time we have a Treasury Management, when I say when are we having the training this year, we always have an annual training for all members so that they know this. So I'm assuming it'll be soon. It's normally in this sort of early in the new year. So this is where we look at the council's money, what we're borrowing, what we're investing, the movements between it. Are we adhering to our statutory responsibilities? And specifically, we talk about this the Cyfarfod and prudential indicators. So, as I said, in the first 6 months of this year, we borrowed £6 million. That was externally at an average rate of just over 4.5%. Further funding of £1 million was received from Welsh Government in respect of a Transforming Towns loan, and we've seen the outcomes of that in Wilko, in the town centre, which is starting to take shape. The council invested with the debt management deposit facility, local authorities and money market funds. So together with a Lloyds Bank call account, these are prudent investments where we go for safety more than high interest rates. Also included in the report is a review of the UK economy, looking at forecasts for interest rates going back from April right through to September this year. As I mentioned, we've got to comply with various prudential indicators and the Cyfarfod, and the report confirms that we fully complied with those. Those indicators are laid out in Appendix 1 if you're interested in those. Based on the Course 2 projection, we will need new loans to finance the capital programme for 25-26, and that'll be totalling about it's nearly 20.4 million, of which just over 17 million is prudential, and 3.377 million is supported borrowing. That supported borrowing is the highways maintenance money. But as the costs of borrowing funds on the market remain elevated, a bit high at the moment, we will keep borrowing to a minimum. And what we tend to do is what's called internal borrowing, where we have money that we're not quite using yet in the reserves, and we will loan to ourselves until we need to use it. If we do any external borrowing, we get advice from the Council's Treasury management advisors. And during this review period, this 6-month period, we actually went out to tender for the provision of Treasury consultant services, and a new company called Arling Close Limited have been appointed with effect from the 1st of October. The Council's got a maturing public works loan board and other maturing debt totaling 8.478 million this year. But at the moment, due to higher interest rates, no decision to refinance has been made. So if interest rates come down, we will probably do that. So as it is, a whistle-stop tour, because this is also going to go to full council for discussion, and it will also be forwarded to the next Governance and Audit Committee for consideration and discussion. So there will be more complete discussion there. So the 3 recommendations for us are that Cabinet approves the Treasury Management mid-year report for the period 1st of April 2025 to 30th of September 2025 and refers the same to full council on the 1st of December 2025 for consideration. Secondly, the latest Treasury management indicators as set out in Appendix 1 be approved and referred to full council on 1st of December for consideration. And finally, that notwithstanding recommendations 1 and 2, the report also be forwarded to the next Governance and Audit Scrutiny Committee for consideration and discussion. And I would move.
And I'll second, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, no hands up, so that's agreed. So moving on to agenda item 8, which is the initial housing revenue account initial housing revenue account budget, revised budget for 2025-26 and proposals 2026-27. It might seem confusing that I'm taking this when I have the cabinet member for housing in front of me, but as this is classified as finance, it comes to me. But so I know Sandra was breathing a sigh of relief, weren't you? Yes. So the report, as it provides an update on the revised housing revenue account budget for this year, it's increased from a surplus of 41,000 up to 440,000, and that will enable a contribution into the housing revenue account reserves, and that's a planned increase. The reserve level at the beginning at the beginning of this financial year was just over 3.8 million, which was lower than expected due to a higher contribution to capital outturn last year. And the transfer as laid out will bring the housing revenue account reserve balance up to 4.325 million as of next March. The housing improvement programme is included in the Q2 capital monitoring report, also on this agenda, totalling 26.346 million in 2025-26. Because I think that when we're looking at this and we talk about the housing revenue account, sometimes we can think purely about our existing housing, but this is also very much about looking to the future and looking at our future housing stock, how existing stock will be improved, but also how we provide homes for people going forward and increasing numbers of homes for people going forward as the need continues to increase. So the report sets out the initial housing revenue account budget for next year. And there are a number of significant cost increases in 2026-27, and that's in respect of capital financing due to additional borrowing undertaken taken as part of the housing business plan. So, in order to build, we need to access finance. And at this time of the year, Welsh Government publishes a new rent policy annually, which comes into effect from the 1st of April. The policy caps rent increase at Consumer Prices Index, or CPI as we tend to call it, plus 0.5%, where the CPI in September is between 3 and 5%. The modelling in the report is currently at 2.7 at present, in line with the 2025-26 increase. But that won't support a sustainable housing revenue account with the various pressures linked to the housing quality standard, decarbonisation for development. So the proposals in January, and these don't take place on this report, but I think what we're going to be looking at as Welsh Government have come out and said, that the September CPI was 3.8. So it's likely to be 3.8 plus 0.5% that will be proposed in January. But we will leave that until that report comes out. So the recommendations just for today are that we've got 5 in total. Cabinet's recommended to approve the revised housing revenue account budget for 2025-26 as set out in paragraph 2.2. Cabinet's recommended to approve the initial housing revenue account budget proposal for 26-27 as set out in paragraph 2.12. Thirdly, Cabinet is recommended to submit the revised 2025-26 budget and initial proposals for 2026-27 to Place Scrutiny Committee for consideration. Cabinet is recommended to refer this report to members of the Place and Resources Scrutiny Committee via the Scrutiny for Information reporting mechanism, requesting that any comments or inquiries from members be submitted to the Head of Finance, Section 151 officer and the Head of Housing. So that's fairly straightforward, isn't it? Yeah, in the new procedures. And finally, that Cabinet is recommended to note the increase for rent and other services are subject to a future report to Cabinet and approve consultation with tenants to proceed. So we are, on this occasion, approving consultation with tenants, but as yet there is no increase for rent and other services. That's subject to consultation. So I'm looking to the Cabinet Member for Housing. I'm happy to move.
And then if it's okay with you, Leader, if I can just say, before I second, just say a few things. I mean, obviously this is a really important sort of mechanism for the portfolio that I look after, to ensure that one, we can sort of maintain the stock that we already have, ensure that they are up to Welsh housing quality standards, that the line of sort of refurbishments and things like that happen within a certain timescale, that they're continued. So for the existing tenants, but also with the number of homelessness people that we have, that we're able to sort of build homes for people to live in, and that they're at the quality and the standards that we would expect for our tenants, and also that it's going to go out to consultation, that we provide affordable homes for people as well. So the rent sort of increase, yes, it's right that it goes out to tenants for consultation, but we are mindful that we want to ensure that the rents that we charge are affordable for the people who live in our existing and future properties. So yes, with that, I'd like to second this report.
Thank you. I think that we remain the lowest cost provider of rental accommodation, And I would like to think, you know, and of houses of quality and homes for life, certainly the ones that we are building now. And hopefully this will continue to allow us to do that. So I can't see anybody with hands up on screen or in the room, so happy to agree that. Agenda item 9 is the Kymin Penarth proposed disposal, and you know, I read the heading of that, and we're not disposing. I mean, these are technical terms, and this is about finding a more constructive and sustainable way forward for a much loved community space. And I think if we have a look at the report, that it was operated for many years by the town council, and back in 2020 it was handed back to the Vale Council, and we went through a process at that time. We were mid-pandemic, and we went through the process of, and again, it's one of these terms, marketing it, to look at whether or not there were any suitable uses for it, ones which were sustainable, ones which contributed to the community. And sadly, we had a number of proposals, but sadly none fitted with that building. So we've been doing place work right throughout the Vale, you know, in the 4 main towns, and the Kymin is somewhere that people are attached to. They want to see it being used constructively. So the decision is to invite proposals again for it. Within the report, if you have a look, there are, in the appendices, there are sort of maps of the location, and there is a potential that we could split the house and the lawn in front of it off from the woodlands and things, because the woodlands are actually supported by local community groups that do growing, have an orchard and various other things. So it's looking to build on that. And if I can find the right paragraph, which I can't, it was, you know, talking about the range of types of things that would be under consideration. Yes, I mean, if you look at paragraph 2.2, they were saying, and that's on page 4, it says, it's paragraph 1.4, it's been pointed out to me. My report didn't print that well. So yes, it was looking at retaining access by the public being favoured, and it might include businesses such as, you know, coffee shops, cafes, restaurants, boutique hotel, co-working space, etc. But we won't really know until we have people come forward and we see what they want. But if we move to the recommendations, it will sort of help to demonstrate the process we're looking to go through. So there are 5, and I'll go through each because I'll make a comment on each. The Cabinet endorse the proposed boundary separation of the Kymin House and Gardens from the wider open space identified in Appendix A. So that's where we looked at the site map, so that there is no way that the wider open space is up for marketing. Then 2, that delegated authority is granted to the Director of Place to instruct the Head of Finance 151 officer in consultation with the Chief Executive, Executive Leader and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources and Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Sustainable Places and Head of, there's lots of us in this, and Head of Service for Neighbourhood Services to advertise the Kymin and grounds on a long lease basis, boundary shown on plan Appendix A as mentioned, on the basis of a marketing plan, including a planning brief setting out specific uses as described in this report. So there would be a document that says the types of things that we would be considering. Thirdly, that Cabinet authorises delegated authority to the monitoring officer, Head of Legal and Democratic Services to draft and execute the contracts with the successful bidder. That's getting the delegations in place, not necessarily saying it is going to happen. For that, a further report is presented to Cabinet outlining the results of the marketing process set out under recommendation 2 above, in order to identify a preferred bidder and to set out any terms and conditions without prejudice, and would also consider the need or otherwise to advertise the loss of public open space under Section 123 Local Government Act 1972. So if the sort of grassed area or whatever was going to be included in it, not the sort of woodland area, that is separate, then there may need to be that. But this, if we take this forward, see what types of response we get, it will come back to Cabinet. This will not be just decided without coming back to Cabinet. And then finally, that this report is referred to the Penarth Town Board for information, and further updates are provided at appropriate junctures. So we will be making sure that local people are kept informed. So I'm happy to move those, but I can see that Councillor Sivanyanam, who happens to be a local member, will want to come in.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And I am commenting as a local ward member. I am pleased to see that we are we're taking this forward, and because the house is in much need of refurbishment, and I'd like to see it come back into use. For me, and I know this has come out in the place consultation that we've done in Penarth. People do see the Kymin as sort of a very Penarth spot, an iconic place for many people in Penarth. So public access would be important. So I hope that the bids can reflect that come forward. But obviously we'll have to look at those going forward. And I'm really pleased to see that the woodlands will be separated out, because the Friends of Kymin and other groups use that space and have looked after that space for a long time. So I'm really pleased to see that separation. So yes, I look forward to seeing what comes of this. But obviously, as a ward member, I would like to see public access as a prime mover for it. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks, Rue. But yeah, it was a conversation I had this week with somebody when I was talking to them about Wilco, actually, and not that is a historic building, but thinking about over the years the buildings that we have brought back into use, because our you can't even say historic buildings, but the buildings that make our towns what they are. It's important that we find ways to maintain them and to keep them going. And I was sort of thinking about, if you think about it, you've got in Penarth, you've got the Pier Pavilion, you've even got the little shelter at the top of Bycliffe Walk. You've in Barry, Pump House, the Good Sheds, now the former public toilets on Barry Island, a whole range of things. And these are things that actually they make a place. They give you a sense of ownership, of belonging to your town, and it is important. The Kymin is actually a standout building. It's County Treasury. It's not listed, but it is important to people of Penarth. And so if we can't find the right use for it going forward, we will keep trying. But as I said, I've moved these, and didn't Ruba second?
I'm happy to second as a councillor outside of the Penarth area.
Right, okay. I was going to say, is she going to come back in now? But anyway, so we don't have any.
Yes, I would have seconded it, obviously.
Right, wonderful, thank you. So that's super, and everybody else is in agreement, so that's fine. Thank you. And then we're on to our final agenda item for today, and this is a review of the Vale Glamorgan Council's petition scheme. Actually, I think this is well overdue. I think it will make things a lot easier going forward. There is a legal duty on us, well, it's called principal councils, of which we're one, to make and publish a petition scheme setting out how the council will handle and respond to petitions. And so, within that, there are certain things that have to be explained about how a petition may be submitted, how and by when the council will acknowledge receipt, the steps a council may take in response to a petition, the circumstances, if any, in which the council might not take any further action, and how the council, and the length of time it will take for the council to make available its response to it. The new petition scheme was implemented on the 5th of May 2022, following approval by Cabinet, and at its meeting on the 14th February 2022, and full council on the 7th of March 2022. So there's a revised scheme attached to Appendix 1 to this report, and this is for Cabinet approval, and if we approve it, it goes on to council, and it's going to be a full day, isn't it? On the 1st of December, it will go on to council on the 1st of December. In terms of the way that we are working with trying to increase engagement with the public, I think something is clearly laid out about how to do this. What makes it, a sort of an effective petition, how it will be dealt with is all very constructive, and I think quite often these days, I was in a meeting the other day where somebody actually in the meeting launched something and said, "Here we are, write to your council," and I thought, we're going to get lots of emails, and we're already doing it. So it's how do you enable people to make their voices heard? When we were doing the TROs recently, for the 20-mile-an-hour changes, we actually held back the communication until the TROs were available, because it was silly to put stuff out where people would have a view and we didn't provide them with the method to make their views heard. So we put them both at the same time, and in the same way here, to actually to sort of have a petition which says, we've got 30,000 people have signed our petition, but actually only 1,000 of them have got anything to do with the Vale. So that if we can find a way to have a scheme where people can easily make their views heard, and we can effectively respond to those, and they feel heard, then that will be far better. So anyway, as I said, this is going to go to full council, so I will leave it for greater discussion there, unless anybody has any specific comments. But the three recommendations for us today are that the revised Vale of Glamorgan Council's petition scheme, which is Appendix 1, be endorsed and be recommended to full council for approval. 2, that Cabinet be asked to note the planned work by the council's communication team to promote the e-petition process and how to make the current petition process more visible on Participate Vale. People actually get much more used to Participate Vale now, a lot more contributions. And 3, that the use of the urgent decision procedure set out at section 1514 of the council's constitution be agreed to allow the report to be considered by full council on the 1st of December. So we're just using that procedure to get it to full council in just over a week. So very straightforward recommendations. I'm happy to move.
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Super. And I spotted Councillor John being supportive as well, so that's good. Excellent, and no dissent online. So that's agreed. So that brings us to the end of today's agenda. I don't have any urgent items, and I don't have any Part 2 items either. So I think that it's for me to thank everyone for their attendance and ask the Democratic team to stop the live stream.